22 minutes before 8 here on the program, American human rights activist, pastor and motivational speaker Dr. Jamal Bryant is currently visiting South Africa. His visit coincides with South Africa's Human Rights Month that reminds South Africans about the sacrifices that accompany the struggle for the attainment of democracy in South Africa. It really is an honor to have with us Dr. Jamal Bryant. He's in studio to talk more on human rights and, of course, his visit to the country. Good to have you. Thank you for being our guest.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
I mean, you do come at such an incredible time. I mean, when you look back at yesterday, the country commemorating Human Rights Day, human rights at the center of everything. I mean, what does it mean for you to be visiting South Africa at a time like this?
Much of Black America's struggle parallels what has happened here in South Africa. In our quest for freedom and equality. And much of what we've done, we looked at the struggle that happened here. And the same thing happens on this side from Nelson Mandela to Martin Luther King Jr. And yesterday, when you look about what happened at Sharpeville, is a reminder for us of what took place in Selma, Alabama. For those who were trying to get the right to vote and were met with aggressive policing. And so the struggle really mirrors ours.
Yeah, it does in many, many instances. And you know, we find ourselves in a rather difficult year this year in South Africa, and many people bringing all human rights to the core, all issues of racism back to the core. It just seems to be rearing its ugly head, and perhaps it's just a sign that there is so much more work that needs to be done.
It's been suppressed and as a consequence not addressed. A lot of us in America believed after the election of Barack Obama we were in a post-racial society. But we've seen more white supremacist groups emerge. We've seen a lot of tension with the campaign of Donald Trump, a lot of anxiety with Black Lives Matter. And so we're having these same conversations, but not as pronounced as what I've seen in South Africa over the last 24 hours.
Yeah. I mean, let's focus a little bit on what's happening in the U.S. at the moment. And we actually are seeing the Republican candidate, well, running for the Republican candidacy, Donald Trump. He talks a lot of segregation, a lot about blocking people out, a lot about not, wanting America back, but trying to eliminate certain groups. Surely this doesn't bode well for the year that we're standing in and for how much has been fought for in equality.
It feels like we're in a time machine going backwards. Over the last 3 weeks, a lot of young Black college students have been assaulted at Donald Trump rallies. We've heard a lot of speech that would remind us of the 50s and 60s. And we're in a tailspin trying to move forward to bridge the gap so that we can, in fact, see Blacks and whites move forward. Young people are frustrated trying to figure out how do we get a peace accord. So I'm here for the next 2 days, not just to speak, but also to learn, to see what South Africa is doing and to see what it is that I can take on.
Yeah. What role does the U.S. clergy actually play in the politics in the U.S. and particularly in the run-up to these presidential elections?
Not the same kind of voice that we've had historically. This really is an election from the grassroots. Young people between the ages of 18 and 25 are really emerging and forging ahead in leadership, much like the young people on college campuses around South Africa. And we're hearing new voices, seeing new faces come through, looking forward not just for forgiveness, but also demanding justice.
I find the hashtag Black Lives Matter campaign, I mean, it is huge. Was and is still huge. And I can imagine that race issues are a very big issue. I mean, we spoke about it here in South Africa. It's still an issue. In America, it's a very big issue as well. Intimidation, race in the country. How do we move past all of this?
I think moving beyond the symbolic and finding the substantive. When you look at here in South Africa, 30% unemployment rate for Black South Africans is the exact same as it is in the United States. When you look at the disparity of those who are being arrested and incarcerated, when you look at those who are not given an opportunity to advance in corporate structure, even after having advanced degrees. And so we have to really look at moving beyond just because you have somebody who is Black in a place of political power. If the masses don't have it, it really doesn't mean anything.
Yeah. I want to talk about, I mean, we've been talking about a lot of segregation, a lot of intimidation and racial issues, and yet in the background of all of this, we're seeing President Barack Obama visiting Cuba.
Yes.
Coming together where you know, there's been no political ties for centuries.
Right.
You know, what does this mean for you?
I think it's a great step forward, but I think it would be reckless to applaud the advancements of Cuba and not deal with the neglect of Haiti. That America pledged $1 billion of development and reconstruction, and that country is still trying to find its wits about it. And so all of the Caribbean needs some development, not just those who can offer something. And so I think that America has to have a very candid conversation. President Zuma yesterday in his address talking about human rights said, let's discuss it. And America keeps trying to sweep it under the rug until there's a lump in the center of the carpet.
Yeah.
But I think this is a time for a global discussion on it. The UN has been trying to do it, but it's not until it's forged in the local community that we really have a tangible ask. What does equality really look like? Not just on paper, but in real life.
Yeah, it's a challenge for all of us to understand what
Yes.
that actually means. You're here, you are talking, you're going to be at the Assemblies for God. It's in Ravonia in Santon. Just tell us a little bit more about what you'll be doing there and some details.
I will be sharing with the Christian faith community on this, the most critical week of our faith, Passion Week. The death of Jesus Christ, but also his resurrection. So many of us want to talk about the victory and want to sidestep the trial and the sacrifice. But incumbent and intrinsic in the Christian faith is knowing that if we suffer with him, we'll reign with him. And South Africa knows that well. Black America knows that well, the suffering part. But now it's time for us to shift to the reigning part. And I want to look through it through a biblical lens.
Yeah, brilliant. 6:30 tonight, tomorrow night as well, 6:30 at Assemblies for God. It's in Ravonia. And do you have to book tickets?
No, they can just come and
just arrive.
Just come and arrive. I'm glad to be back. I lived here 93 and 94 as a college student. I went to USA as a transfer student from Morehouse College. So I'm glad to be back home.
What an honor to have you here. It's amazing. Also accompanied by Bishop Noel Jones.
Yes, Bishop Noel Jones will be Thursday and Friday.
Fantastic.
And so it's going to be a great week.
Beautiful. And like you say, such a significant week. And it's so great that you're here in South Africa
Thank you for
during this
having
time.
me.
It's an absolute pleasure. Dr. Jamal Bryant here in South Africa, human rights activist and pastor. A very important week on the Christian calendar, of course, leading up to Easter. And of course, these are some of the things we're talking about, and the week of human rights here in South Africa. Let's